Hi everybody, I wanted to make a little video to go over and just kind of review how we did the 3 vocabulary strategies that you're going to be using in your Cornell Notes homework for Chapter 3 in Environmental Science. So if you can't remember where the homework is, go to our LLED class and the Lessons tab, and you'll go into the Week 3 folder. And I put 2 separate folders in there for our work on Tuesday and our work on Thursday. So if you click on the Tuesday folder for vocab, you'll see the homework sheet is there. And then there's just a review of what you're going to do. So you're going to do, the whole Chapter 3, some sections Cornell Notes, and I have them marked. So look, Section 3.1 is Cornell Notes, Section 3.4 is Cornell Notes, and Section 3.5 are Cornell Notes as well. And then in Section 3.2 and 3.3, you're going to take out the important vocab words and big ideas, and you're going to use the 3 different strategies that we went over in class. The index cards for these 3 vocab, the CI for these 2, and the almost but not quite for these combinations of vocabulary words. So I'm going to show you some examples in this first section just so make sure people are clear with what they should do, and then you'll do the same in Section 3.3 for these terms. So let me show you here quickly. So remember, the first one we did were the index cards, and this is the front and this is the back. This is the example we did in class for the term trophic level, and I said, you want to put the section that this comes from, so it's from Chapter 2, Environmental Systems, and in Section 2.5, which is the section on from species to ecosystems. And I put the actual formal definition on the front because we use the index cards when we have really big ideas that have lots of subparts that you need to get all of that kind of together in one place. So we have the definition of trophic level as organisms' feeding status in an ecosystem, and then I said this the figure 2.16 from page 41 is probably very useful, so that's what we're going to put on the back. And if you look at that more closely, this is the one we did in class, which is an example of trophic levels. That includes primary producers, consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers, which are the top carnivores. I have the other names that those can be called by, and I have examples, and then over here on the right, the other type of levels that go through all of those levels there. So kind of just simplified the picture that was in the book. Now, of course, this is from Chapter 2. You're going to do the same thing for these terms, right? So front, the word and the definition, and the back, additional information about the sub ideas that belong to those bigger ideas, okay? And then the CI we're going to do in this Section 3.2 on Batesian and Müllerian mimicry. Now I'm going to do this first one just to show you so you have an idea what we're talking about. So if you remember, the CI stands for the 4 parts of this extended definition, which are state it, elaborate, give an example, and then illustrate it. So from Section 3.2, the word is Batesian mimicry. And if you go to page 61 in your text, there's a formal definition, which you'll fill in there. So Batesian mimicry is blah, 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 whatever. And then you're going to elaborate on that, which means you're going to try and say the same thing in your own words. So in other words, Batesian mimicry is when animals can pretend to be poisonous when they aren't. And an example of that is, and from the book they give an example of Batesian mimicry, is this harmless beetle that actually looks like a very poisonous and dangerous wasp. And then to illustrate it, this is Batesian mimicry is like. So you're thinking about a metaphor. What is this idea like? And so I said it's like putting on a Halloween disguise. People can think you're scary, but you really aren't. So you want to think of another way to illustrate that. So it's like something else. And then you do the same thing, the SEEI, for the Mullerian mimicry, using your book and trying to do the same thing for that. Okay, so that's what you'll do in that part. And then the third one is the almost but not quite, which is the strategy we use for vocabulary when you have two or more terms that are similar but not quite the same. So there are some differences, and it helps you look at the two together and try and have a visual way to remember what's different about each term and what's the same about each term. So if we go down, I took those first two, intraspecific competition and interspecific competition. So I have that's from section 3.2 on species interactions. This is an almost but not quite. I made a table. So if you had 3 or 4 terms, which you'll have in the next one, you'll just put 4 columns, right? So I have intraspecific competition is competition among members of the same species, right? So I have the same species underlined, or you could highlight it. And I'm remembering that the prefix intra means among. And then over here I have interspecific competition is competition between members of different species, and that's inter. Right? So think of interstate, which is a road that goes between two states, right? So that can help you to remember the differences between those two, right? And then the book gives you the example of competition among cheetahs, and that, you know, the faster cheetahs are the ones that can get to the food faster, so they're competing for the same food in an area. So same species. And then it gives some examples of different species. So you might have turtles and fish who are competing for food in the same small piece of water, and that can be trouble because maybe there's not enough food, right? So those are two different species. And I put the page number 59, so if I need to go back later to fill in more, I can. And then what's similar between these two, right? And that's the notion of competition itself, right? And so I put the definition of competition from the book, competing for resources that are limited, right? So maybe there's not enough food, or there's not enough living space, or there's not enough water, right? And so that's the bigger idea of competition, but then it's broken out into these two different ideas. And then your book also goes into, if there's a scenario of intraspecific competition, how do those species adapt? And they give 3 examples. The young could move, or the young and the old can choose to eat different things, like the young could eat plants and the old of a species might eat meat, so it limits competition. Or the stronger can force the weaker out, like the cheetahs, where you see fighting among deer in order to have the territory that they need to protect, right? So you'll look at the same thing for, do you have any more details that you need to put in that are going to help you understand the differences between these two big ideas? Okay, so I hope that helps. Get in touch if you have any questions. Otherwise, good luck with your homework.